we're trying to see if this is actually going to work. Let's see if the ye old Facebook.
Yay, I see on Facebook.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Okay.
There it is.
All right, so we're here. Let's allow people to get in. So how are you guys doing this week?
Good. I've never been more mediocre.
All right, that's encouraging. Yeah, it's been a month since we've really had a talk. This last month has been filled with stuff. I had my high school reunion the week before last, a wedding last week. You were out of town for like a trip.
Yeah, I went to Montana.
Montana. I would have liked to have seen Montana. So, yeah, it's stuff and things. How about you, Jared?
Good. No complaints.
Good,
So is Jared relegated to the little tiny picture in the corner?
No, I think when he talks, he will take.
Oh, let's see if I.
Yeah,
if I
there
talk,
you
if
go.
I
Yeah,
take
yeah.
them.
He takes primacy of place.
I don't know if I do or not because it doesn't on Facebook. I just stay in the corner.
No, you should be up now.
I did briefly.
Sorry, it's a delay. I forgot.
Yeah.
The delay.
So here's the deal. We're going to be discussing radical political decentralization with an emphasis on people defining their own fundamental value and being able to move to a nation state that exemplifies those values. This is tongue-in-cheek, so we're making fun of everyone here. I'm sure everyone will be pissed off by the end, unless we can just, consider this tongue-in-cheek. If you are viewing from India, do consider this in terms of India. Like, how would you divvy it up? And try to think, like, the goal here is to think out of the box politically or socially or culturally. Like, what are things that people have made mountains out of molehills about, where if you were to give them a whole state, you're saying, okay, all of you go and try to make an infrastructure work here. And they would realize real quick that there's like 8 of them, but they've still managed to dominate the political discourse, even though there's only 8 of them. So that's kind of the joke here. We have a couple states that are so stupid. Jared came up with some of those. Oh man, there's some fun jokes in here. Some of it will hurt feelings, and that's just kind of the part of the joke. It's tongue in cheek. But the idea here is to get people thinking through how much of our political discourse in 2019 is like 200 years behind the times on a hot button issue that we really don't care about. We say that we care about, but if you were pushed to, when push came to shove, and you had to actually move to another place and sovereignly hold to that one thing, you would be like, I don't know. I think I want to go back home. And then you'd realize what actually home means. So that's kind of the gist of what we're discussing today. Let me just make sure that the chat thing, I was having technical difficulties left and right here. Some that apparently I was having all along and never realized. So, what do you know? Okay. All right. So I've got a monologue for today. It's called The Cooperative Nation States of America. And then we will have a little discussion. Whether you take myths literally or figuratively, it is undeniable that myths of all kinds have changed the course of history. Life imitates art and worships myth. There are some myths that are not meant to be worshipped or imitated. They are meant to serve as warnings. Nevertheless, in spite of these myths' alleged fictional status, humans thousands of years later, with all the advances of science, technology, and medicine, managed to continue to ignore their warnings and repeat the failures of the past with an almost insatiable insanity. It's like we're drawn to taboos like a rat to a baitless trap with signs alerting us, "This will kill you." Well, I gotta try that. Today, we are going to talk about radical political decentralization. This is not a new concept. The Jewish people had a story about radical decentralization. It was mandated by God in response to the Tower of Babel, the monumental effort of a king to lift humanity into the heavens. The quintessential Icarus tale, but one in which the king took Icarus's dreams to the corporate level and leveraged his sizable political power and riches to demand unity to this common goal of reaching the heavens. You are part of something greater. We will reach the stars. We will be like unto the gods. The story goes that God is troubled by this, almost worried that these people might storm the gates of Olympus, so to speak. Nothing will stop them. It's a curious moment in the Jewish scriptures that's always sounded really pagan to me, like God is actually worried that a change in humanity's elevation is going to affect their ontological status. I've always puzzled over it, until recently. God wasn't worried that the humans would accomplish too much, but that their unity in culture, language, and politics, combined with the religious uniformity of mission, would render them all worker bees in the service of a dead end. How many times have you personally witnessed a company, a group of people, or an individual, maybe even yourself, not just unwilling, but unable to admit defeat? The end of the line? Not for the stubborn. Humans have a penchant for self-annihilation. We get to the bottom of the barrel, the top of the mountain, and there's nothing there. It's an act of God when we reach that empty place and admit that we're wrong. Most of the time, we just repress, suppress, ignore, and carry on. If the Babel brethren had reached the heights of their delusion and ran out of oxygen, you think that would have stopped them? That upwardly trending stock market line of Icarian tunnel vision is not a product of capitalism, but an endemic fault in the foundation of humanity. We don't want to deal with the cracks in our psyche, society, and culture. We want to leave this earthly plane, and we're still doing it today. So the story goes that God knew his creations better than they knew themselves, and he made it impossible for them to communicate with one another. He gave them the gift of tongues. Humanity doesn't like being told no, however, so ever since we have tried to force unity, to consolidate and mandate conformity. Again and again, dynasty after dynasty, kingdom after kingdom, empire after empire, Reich after Reich, we have attempted to reenact the Icarian ideal of the Tower of Babel. You see, God knew what was in our hearts, pure, soulless greed. Capitalism did not invent greed, dumbass. Money is not the root of all evil. The love of solipsistic value is. The Tower of Babel was a Ponzi scheme for the Kali Yuga, and we've been falling for it ever since. There is no cause, there is no mediator, there is no single language or culture or nation that can contain the thriving, bustling, teeming, spontaneous order of 7 billion unique individual human beings. The United States of America is bursting at the seams with outmoded political debates, 300 years behind the times. It's time for you to think about what is important to you. What is the political, social, cultural, linguistic hill you are willing to die on or kill for? The problem with the United States is that it calls for not just unity, but demands uniformity. So today, a proposal for a way forward. The Cooperative Nation States of America. It's time for some proletarian gerrymandering, lords and ladies, today on the Surfing Violinist podcast. And I am joined by Judah McNeil and Jared Putnam. Thank you guys for joining me today.
Thank you for having us on.
So, a little background about this map for those who are not familiar. I was at Mises University in Auburn, Alabama in June, and I attended one class, a lecture by Ryan McMakin on radical political decentralization. And I don't know, about like 5 sentences in, I was just like, bang, this light bulb went off, and I started drawing this map. Like, what would America look like if in tongue-in-cheek, we actually died on the hills that we claim to be important? You know, the things that we actually put our money where our mouth is, and we started doing the infrastructure for hot button political issues. And some of them I was like, oh, this would actually be kind of cool. And so I was editing this map a couple months later. Jared had been here. We did a podcast, and the next morning he walked in and saw this map in Photoshop that I was putting together. And he saw this part. I believe it was let's see.
It was the Puritans, pervs, Puritans, and potheads part.
Pervs, Puritans, and potheads. So he saw that part, which is Nevada, Utah, and Colorado, and that they're all in one. They were all in one state. He just started laughing, and so he got that's the tone of the map, like the idea here. And then he helped me do the rest of them, and we came up with this absurd thing. So, what went through your mind when you saw the map?
I just remember. I remember actually, like, I mean, of course, you normally read from left to right, but I because of the potheads part, it's lime green, and so it stood out more than any other part of the map. So that was the first thing I thought I saw, and so it's there in Colorado. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But then I started going across, and then I started seeing the connections between the Puritans and the pervs, and like, oh yeah, no, 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 this is perfect. This is so. Initially, I was like, oh yeah, that's fine. But that was the part where I really saw that those three were connected. That hooked me into it all.
And I've only flown through Salt Lake City one time, but I was
Yeah,
like, man, these Mormons have got it made, dude. This place is beautiful.
It's beautiful, yeah.
it is. It's Utah. Utah is the prettiest state. I think. I mean, I think I started to say like the prettiest state I've been through, but I think it's just the prettiest state. Period.
Oh
Yeah.
no, 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 no,
No,
Oh,
no.
what is it,
what
Montana?
is it?
Montana for sure.
Ooh, Montana.
Yeah,
All right.
Montana or like parts of California.
Yeah, California is hard to beat, dude. But I've given it to the Democratic Socialists. So in this partition, I've already decided this is this word is law now. Now that we've released it, the meme has released. So
Although,
yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I already decided.
yeah, although you say that kind of like you couldn't live there because that wouldn't work, but like would living with the Puritans work for you?
Well, no,
Well,
because it's all together. You got the Puritans, potheads,
That's
and the
true. That's
pervs,
true.
so they
That's true.
balance out each other. But
That's
that's
true.
that's the thing that they have
Which
to
one
do.
you get along with?
That's where I be. So I actually put the perfume nationalist in right in Vegas. So I'm giving them Vegas. I would hang around there. I think.
So I got a question. Like I don't really know the answer to this. Have either of you, like with your family or like, okay, other than India, have either of you lived in any of these states other than like Florida and Georgia?
No.
Uh,
Well,
um,
Indiana. Yeah. I was so young. I
um,
don't remember.
so I've not lived there, but I've had family in Oregon and Arizona. So I've lived there for weeks at a time.
Okay, that counts.
But the most has been like 3 weeks, 3 weeks consecutively that I've ever been in one of those places.
Okay.
So what's your thought, Judah, when you see this? When you first saw this map, what was your thought?
I mean, I was, it's like, you hear about those like Asian kids who saw certain video games and like had like, convulsions and like started like going into seizures. That was my like similarly like all these colors and words. I
Are you
just started like throwing up and no. um I don't know. I was at first I was just really. I did have like a visceral repulsion to it, like the lime green and the yellow. Just like, what am I looking
Are
at?
you saying that I am not meant to be a designer? My UX
No.
is bad.
Actually, I was pretty impressed with your design. On like you were going through there pretty fast with it. So
Well,
yeah.
my colors are.
It's
Yeah,
one
not
of those
good.
things though that the more you look at it, the more you love it. Like this, the detail. I, I'm typically a pretty critical person when it comes to like stuff. Like I want to find flaws, and it's really hard to find flaws, even though you guys have barely lived in America. I think you guys
Barely lived in America.
you've done a very good job I mean, you guys are smart. I mean, it's good stuff.
Yeah, we smart. We smart.
You're
Let me pin
smart.
this to my. Okay, if anyone wants to see the map in detail, I've pinned it on my Ford Like the Car Twitter account. Here, I'll throw it in chat. You can go there and see it. It's up on the top. So we'll start with Florida, and we'll work our way like clockwise. Or no, counterclockwise. We'll go counterclockwise. So wait, wrong. So we're not going to see our beautiful faces for a while as we look at this map in earnest, and we'll just kind of discuss as we go along. Okay, so first off, I'm starting in Florida because that's my home state and the thing I know the most about. So Florida's a weird state. It's a swing state when it comes to politics. You'll notice the color schemes. I kind of played with the blue and red. You've probably seen those maps of America divided into Republican as red and Democrat as blue. And in the most recent election, it's like a wall of red, except in the city centers where it's blue. There's almost like varicose veins of blue going along the major thoroughfares to these urban areas. But that really just doesn't tell the story, and one of the reasons why I'm doing this map, just kind of as a middle finger to this whole stupid dialectic that we're forced to pretend is real in 2019. So Florida normally would have you can't even see my cursor. I didn't think about that. Florida would normally have the Panhandle just west of the part where it says Tally. That's Tallahassee, our capital. To the west over here, it tends to be pretty Republican. This whole area was Trump in the 2016 election, and this whole area was for the Republican governor candidate. Even after we got demolished by Hurricane Michael, it still went red and voted for Republican. So I have just lumped us in with South Alabama, and some people joke about that and just call us Lower Alabama. So we are white trash class. I don't think many white people from this area would have a problem with being called that, to be honest. If you look right across the way, we've got Black Renaissance, a celebration of Mississippi blues, and this is a way for us to be next to each other. A lot of people will look at this and say, well, you're just, reinstitutionalizing segregation. Oh, I'm reinstitutionalizing segregation? Like the demagogues in our political parties aren't? Like reducing us all to one thing? That's like the most politicized debate is right there. But it's not a celebration of either culture's successes. It's always talking about negatives, bad news. If it bleeds, it leads.
That's why I thought, I thought you held back a little bit. Probably should be like black. Like there's no black power anywhere here. There's no.
Oh well, there is. We get up to it in the top.
Yeah.
We get there.
Right, but like this, like if you look at a map, this is in reality where the highest concentration of African Americans are in America.
Right.
Black Renaissance.
Right.
Yeah, I mean some of the stuff is sort of true to like real geography, and then some of it is just like intentionally opposite or random.
Some of it's an intentional middle finger. It's like if you really care about this, like we have an abortion state. It's like if you really care about it that much, you can move across the country to if that's all that matters, it doesn't matter where you are then. Like geography is not important to you. And I think people start realizing this is the problem with globalism is it takes a political ideal and pretends that geography and weather and culture and religion and just some things that seem like they don't even play a part. I mean, it could be lack of cicadas or presence of grasshoppers, like things that you think there is a little political chaos theory to so much of what actually happens at the local level. So the point here is to say that people think that they really care about a certain hot topic or hot button issue. But then when push comes to shove, they'd be like, well, I'm not leaving my home in, Colorado for that. Like, I'm sorry.
I know, it's just, it's hilarious. I just realized you put Black Hebrew Israelites way up in like North Dakota.
Look where but look where I put the Christian, look where I put the Christian idiots too. I mean, those, like a lot of us, we were those. I mean, probably me and you at one point. I don't know. Judah's never been quite total normie. He's always been the crunchy, weirdo Christian conservative. But like I was that guy. So for reference for people who are like, what are y'all talking about? Let me get there.
Well, and I think the important thing to remember about this, that can kind of get glossed over, or if people don't pay attention, is like, this is not like we would force people into some kind of encampments here. This is everyone has to choose what is, and I mean, Ford said that, but just to emphasize that, like everyone has to choose what is most important to them. So you're going to have people who are, anti-war, but then are also, I don't know, one of the other things, rugged individualists or whatever.
Right.
And then they have to pick like what is the most important thing to you.
And
Yeah, I guess I would put Black Hebrew Israelites where boring is. I don't know why that's boring. It's like
well, see,
Missouri is
well,
like the least boring state.
but that's really, I've never even been through Missouri, so I don't know. It just seems boring to me.
It's boring because you've never been there. Yeah.
So is it nice? Like I thought that about Kansas, and then I went there. I was like, oh man, I like Kansas. It's all right. It's like, and it is boring, but I liked it. I thought it was good.
It's beautiful, but it's also like huge. Like that would be, that's where Ferguson is. It'd be like that would be a great hotbed for, You
Well,
wouldn't
see,
have to give him,
and that's
you wouldn't have to give him the cold plains of North Dakota.
well, that's the same thing though. That's the point. I'm trying to get people to think about how many different like dialectics exist in the universe, and how we've allowed certain political and cultural and religious influences to get a disproportionate leverage over the whole political discourse. Like, why in the world? So going back to that top left, why in the world is Hillsong like the conquered Christian music? Like, it's like a whole culture. It's from Australia, for crying out loud. It takes over all of the U.S. Every church you walk into is this, and there are people outside of the Christian community that have no idea what that is, but they like dictate the way that Christians, quote unquote, worship God in 2019. And like,
so you didn't put it up there because of Mars Hill?
No, I put it up there just to put them on a reservation because
I mean, if you just look across through there, it's just like a bunch of them kind of congregated together.
Right. So you start with Christian colonialism. So these are people who believe, and I used to be this guy. These are people who believe that the purpose of Christianity is to colonize the world with a Western post-World War II version of what they think evangelical Christianity is through missions or military. Dude, I walk into our local church here, and they've got a prayer map, and it's like prayer for missionaries in the military. I can't wrap my mind around, like, they literally have missionaries and military right next to each other. It's like, I understand, like, giant countries are going to have a military, but it's that incongruity just doesn't even cross their minds. It just doesn't. There's like, Jesus. I mean, he was totally a Caesar. Jesus is king, as Kanye's new album just said. Jesus is king does not mean, he's not saying that he's coming with a sword in this sense. Like, it's like some of these people almost have like, oh, they're going to make the book of Revelation happen, and unironically thinking about that. Mm-hmm. So anyways, there's so much nuance to this, and the point here is really not to say that this is a real proposed gerrymandering of the United States, but to get people thinking about just how diverse we are within our own communities, and how much infighting we have within our own communities, and what we would really be willing to move to another country for. Like, how many people said, "Oh, if Trump gets elected, I'm out of here." How many people made good on that promise? So here, let's just go through it. Keep talking. But so we got Black Renaissance is Mississippi, white trash class is Alabama, and I'd be a part of that. Tallahassee is a blue area, and notice there I put like Black Renaissance kind of like pinkish magenta or something. That people often forget that the Black community has many different political ideals than like conservative whites or Democrat whites. So they're kind of in their own political class, and that's a very the church is an important part of a lot, at least in the South, of the Black community, and so that's kind of in the middle. It's not really red or blue, Mm-hmm. And then white trash class tends to be red, and it also fits because the University of Alabama's there, and they're Roll Tide. I mean, Roll Tide is like a religious statement around here. It's not even.
It's perfect all the way around. It's the MAGA colors. It's Alabama.
That's right.
Perfect.
The only irony is that of course, it's also the color of the Red Scare. So, but that's we are Russians now. I mean, all conservatives are just Russian bots, as we've learned. So that makes sense too.
I've heard actually some. There is some background to that the Democratic Party did not want to be associated with the red. Like when they were somehow when their colors were being assigned, they did not want to be associated at all. They said that there's already enough association with communism that they chose. Like the blue is like that had something to do with it.
Fascinating. That's interesting. Okay, let's keep going then. So then we have Georgia has been commandeered by the SEC, and this is another joke just to point out like where people's allegiances really are. Like people say that they're political or whatever. Like, dude, college football is like a religion.
It is a
for
religion.
like
Yeah.
how many people? I mean, what do you think the number is, Jared? Like, I mean, how many people do you think worship above the almighty state or God? They worship the almighty SEC. Like how many people?
Yeah, I honestly I don't know. I would have to think about that. But it really is a religion. I wrote a back when Mark Richt was the head coach of Georgia, and when I was a newspaper sports editor, I wrote an article talking about basically like it's time to fire Mark Richt. And man, people got mad. Like, people got madder at me about that than anything else. And even my boss, who's a Georgia graduate and a diehard Georgia fan, was mad. And and so he said at the time, which I mean, it's just a common expression. He's like, basically saying like you shouldn't have written that. He's like, this is a religion to people,
Right,
including him.
It's
so,
not even really a joke. It's not really like,
it's not.
And it's the same way in India. Like if Indians were to do their own decentralization map, where things were like cricket would be a big dividing line. It's like what. Like for a lot of people, it would just be like, oh, pro India. But some people actually do get in the National Cricket League, the IPL, and so that might be a formative issue. Sports, music, I mean, all these things come into play. And
yeah, that was one of my critiques. Like if you hadn't had the SEC in there, I would have said like you got to have more sports allegiances and
right
and more music. That was one thing that came up for me. Like culturally, there's very little like music.
Well, and then the other thing that really would have to be addressed, and this just goes to show how complex we are as individuals, especially in 2019, is language. There would be some place that would be like, you have to speak English in order to own property here. You have to speak Spanish in order to own property here. Like that argument has been lost. We're going to have people speaking only Spanish in certain areas of this country, or only something like, Chinatown or something like that, where it's only one, and it is like going to another country. Like that's just going to happen, but in pockets, right? It's never going to, there's this fear that there's going to take over. Look, I've been to India. They're still debating over language and what language should be, should rule, and it's a constant flow and flux. Like it's hard to say like what really wins. Like Bollywood has made Hindi actually more ubiquitous than the Constitution. Like it's a soft power thing, Mm-hmm. So, and when you try to force that through political coercion, speaking, well, then fine. Then go create your own nation state where that's it. Where like we're only speaking English. Oh, well, what variety of English? Are you going to let pidgin speaking English people come in? No, they have to speak. They have to speak in God's English. Oh, you mean receive pronunciation like from London? Like, oh no, I don't want to be no highfalutin. Oh, then you start realizing, oh, there aren't really hard and fast rules about what that even means anyway. And just it's really calling people to their hypocrisy about things that they think that is defining for them, but when push comes to shove, they're not going to pull the trigger when it's time to execute an offender, or to move themselves to that place. That's kind of the
one thing that guy said in the you referred to that Nisa's speech or talk, and one thing he said was that caught my attention. He said most people, they only want to buy American, but if they really experienced other countries, and if they really experience, so like me having lived like over a lot of these countries, a lot of these states, it was really hard for me to like start pigeonholing, because like in some of these states, I start thinking about the specifics rather than the generalization of that area or the political bent. And so this has been really fun for me, like hearing you guys talk about it. I'm a red state MAGA guy living in Illinois,
right?
In Chicago. So it's like I realized that all these things are constructs built out of people's impression of the place rather than any kind of like if you live in that place, it's just so much more complex.
Oh yeah. Well,
Why would you move? Like you don't know what is in that other
right.
state.
And that's how I felt when I came back from India. I thought the culture shock was bad when I went to India, and I was like, I had a conversation with Akira from Twitter, and I was saying when I came back from India to here, it was like 5 years had happened and I felt like a child. I was like, what did I miss? There's a lot that's going on in the last 5 years. I feel like 3 generations have passed. Like Snapchat, what is this? Like I was totally just confused. And I think part of the problem is when you look at those political maps, like post the election of 2016, it's this sea of red with these varicose veins of blue along the major trade centers and in the urban areas. Well, it's okay. Well, it's like a reverse blood map. It's like in your body, it's pretty much red and blue going back and forth. So it's an equal sort of scenario. But really, we're not getting the other layers. I mean, if you really wanted to do a layered map of the United States, there's musculature, there's tendons, there's bones, there's fatty tissues, there's organs. There's nervous system. So there's all these other things, and that's really kind of what I'm trying to get at with this. This is totally mandated. Since people have seen this meme, it is true. But it's really just to get people thinking. So let's look back at the map. We've gone through like 2 states here. Florida, the rest of Florida is weird Florida. It's purple because that area, especially from Jacksonville, the eastern seaboard, coastal areas in the United States tend to shift blue. So that area is going to be, kind of in between, purplish. You'd be surprised you get into some of the areas of Miami, weird things happen. Weird allegiances form. You would think it would be very blue, but then it turns out to be red because you run into pockets of legal immigrants who are frustrated by, I'm sorry, I don't see the frickin' alert. Dadgummit.
What happened?
I didn't put the alert above the map, so I didn't see it. We got somebody doing something. So thank you to the person who did something. I missed the alert. Cardinal sin of streaming. I will see it next time.
What happened?
I don't know. Somebody did something. Maybe subscribed or something.
Oh.
Okay, so weird Florida is a weird place. It's mixed up with you've got immigrants, you've got northerners who are transplants and are tired of cold weather, you've got rednecks. It is truly weird, and one of the reasons why we have the Florida Man meme is because there are no rules about sharing. I think it's it's public record when anything that goes to the cops or whatever. So that's why we have so many fun, weird Florida Man stories, and most of them do come from this area, just kind of the middle area. Then we got Tampa, a little more of a bluer, slanting place, and they have their own kind of infrastructure right there. A lot of rich people south of Tampa, some of the richest in Florida. So that area, they can have their own little sovereign state. And then we've got Brave New World Mecca, which is Orlando, which is Disney World. And I hate Disney World, so they can have their own place. That was like a part of the Disney World flag, I think. So they can have their little Brave New World sanctimonious, superstitious, commodified, homogenize the world. They can have it. Screw Disney. Any other thoughts about Florida?
No, that's your home territory.
Yeah.
You got that. You know it better than we do.
Okay, so
I mean, there's nothing about Disneyland. Shouldn't there be something?
No, that's what
that is. I just explained that Brave New World Mecca. That's I hate Disney World. Yeah, you tuned me out. You tuned me out.
You said Brave New World. It's like
boring. Well, yeah, Disney is boring. If you want to live in Disney World, go live there. I hate that place. It's a vacuum. It's a black hole. I was taking over everything. Ezra Bueller followed. Sorry for the miss there. Thank you for the follow on Twitch there, Ezra. Godspeed to you, personage. Bueller. Actually, it's got the umlaut. So how do you pronounce the umlaut? Bueller.
I think you pronounce it Bueller.
Probably.
All right. 2 states.
So SEC, we've got Georgia, which has become SEC. Above that, we have the Yankee refugee camp, which is... explain that one to us, Jim.
Yeah, so North Georgia, especially kind of north central to northeast Georgia, has sort of just become this, this refuge for people moving from the Northeast or from like Midwest areas like Ohio. It's upper middle class, at least, and they just want to move south for better weather. And so, yeah, the sort of north of Atlanta, north central and northeast Georgia has become just sort of this little mecca. Like I used to work and live in Forsyth County, and it's one of the I don't know what it is now, but at the time it was like one of the 7 wealthiest counties in the United States.
Oh, wow.
Because it was just a lot of, like I said, upper middle class minimum, if not, very wealthy, white people moving from other parts of the, Northeast and Midwest.
Yeah, so it is a different world up there, and Atlanta really could be its own place in a sense. I mean, I would really like to amend this map with city states, like little Singapores and stuff like that. And I think Atlanta would be its own city state. I love Atlanta. Like it's quite a mix of things. I mean, it's good. All right, Southern Comfort. So that's all I can think of is Mr. Murphy. Back at Tacoma, our college, it's like it's the refined Southern gentleman. It's the Kevin Spacey and House of Cards. It's that laid back accent. It's not quite not quite a totally Southern Roll Tide.
The less combative Southern.
Right. The less combative.
It's the more comforting.
It
Southern.
is Southern comfort.
When I saw that, I was like, yes, Southern comfort.
I'll kill you with comfort.
Right. And then above them, they'll kill you with guns.
God and guns. So we got a little joke here. We got God and guns over here. Is half of North Carolina, and then crap, I'm on the wrong thing again.
Well, we'll get to it.
Oh yeah. So God and guns. Yeah, there you go. So half of North Carolina is God and guns. And then right next to that is Tennessee, where this is terrible. It's Memphis legal.
Well, I see. The reason I like that is because Tennessee is known for being,
it's a meth powerhouse, baby.
Well, not necessarily meth, but it takes it to extreme. The fact that everything is legal in Tennessee, and so like saying meth is legal to me, like it's like all right, so everything's legal.
But
I like it.
It's such a hub of Christendom, especially Dave Ramsey's located there. So I just think that's a funny.
Tennessee is a weird state because I mean you think about it, it's got Nashville, which is like the country music.
Yeah, exactly. Memphis. I mean, basically all of like modern. I mean, rock, blues, and country. That was like the fertilizing ground for all that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then of course it's it's got tons of like rural. It's just rural Appalachia in parts. Maybe not to the extent that Kentucky is, but a
lot of homesteaders there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, since meth is legal in Tennessee, we're going to go up to Kentucky, where bourbon fascism is the thing. It's taken bourbon to the next level, baby, and we're going to start a golden age of whiskey to overthrow the Scotch. What is the Scotch totalitarianism?
So you can only drink bourbon there.
You can only drink bourbon. Drinking Scotch is punishable by death.
Ooh, fascinating.
Yeah. Now you can drink other non-whiskeys. I think
drink
vodka. Vodka, beer, tequila. Maybe not tequila. I don't know. I don't think tequila. I think vodka's okay because they're Russians, so it's like we're
I don't
Russians
think so, man. I think if you do any hard liquor, it has to be.
It has to be bourbon. Okay.
I mean, it's bourbon fascism here, not.
Yeah.
Bourbon.
No, you're right. You're right. It's bourbon fascism. So no Scotch, no tequila, no rum, and no vodka. GTFO, bourbon fascism. All right, we're gonna move over. We'll come back. We'll move over to the Confederate Monument Sanctuary. This is really stupid because Virginia is not necessarily the place known for that, but it's just we're forcing people to like pick a battle there. It's like, would enough people be able to rally around that? I, for one, am against the whole redacting. Like that was what our whole podcast was about. Basically reverse redaction. Like why, if you think it's a sin and lots of terrible things happen in the formation of the country, you want to remember it, then You don't want to pretend that it never happened. Like, oh, but then you're glorifying all these bad things that happen. Are the pyramids glorifying all these bad things that happen? You want to redact those? Like, it's just so stupid. Yeah, how do you think that they made the pyramids? Dumbass. Like, it's so dumb.
Virginia is, but it's where Charlottesville, all that happened.
Oh, that's true.
So it is kind of known, for that.
Oh, that is hot button.
And so the other thing too is, like, there's two counties. Actually, the county where I work in North Carolina and the one over beside it have, within the last, I guess this was earlier in the year. So within the last year, in 2019, declared themselves gun sanctuaries, which is a new thing. And so basically it's this like proclamation by county commissioners that if the federal government outlaws guns or comes to confiscate guns, then the local sheriff's department will like block the roads of the county borders, and they'll fend them off to preserve your guns for you. So it's not like it's a joke, but it's not really as far-fetched as it seems. Right. So
absolutely not. In fact, it's only around DC that you get the Fairfax County.
That's true.
Area.
Okay, yeah.
It's really super liberal.
And so the Confederate Monument Sanctuary can be the place where people go to learn things from Confederate monuments, because that's always the defense for them too, is well, how are we going to learn? How are we not going to learn from history if we can't ever? And I'm always like, what is one thing that you've learned from a Confederate monument?
Well, but to Ford's point, I mean, having them reminds us that people are like that.
Well, it does, but they're not there for that reason, though. I disagree on that. I mean, like, I'm not a tear down the monuments guy, but it's one of those things where we have statues and monuments up generally as a tribute, to people, and the right is not protecting them as we need to learn from this. They're, protecting it because it's sort of we have a reverence for this.
Yeah. I mean, I see it both ways, because if you think about Saddam's statue coming down, but even like the taking down of things in a way is just a reinforcement of their power. And that's my point. And we are selective in the way that we redact things in history. No one's going to ever redact the pyramids. Never going to happen. Right. No one's going to redact the Taj Mahal. Indians just owned it. That was that was basically a symbol of Islamic oppression in India. But Indians don't see it that way. They've just appropriated it. They've just taken it and said, this is part of our heritage. They don't sit there. I'm sure there's some enterprising person who's like, I'm going to take it down. But what a solipsistic, terrible way to live. It's just, I got to get that thing out of here. I don't know. I think it's disempowering by giving them so much power, actually.
But I think, and nuanced, your point nuanced about learning from it. The people that worship it, if you keep it up, the people who worship it, you get to see who those people are.
Exactly. That's the other thing.
And
yes.
You take it down, and we get into what was it called? False. Oh, what was that thing with the podcast about you're false, you pretending to be.
Preference falsification.
Yeah. You
yes.
get into preference falsification.
Yes. That's the whole point of this map, basically, is to say, look, we think that our preferences are dictated down to two things, but when push came to shove, I would not move to cis heartland, which we're going to get to in a minute. I wouldn't even move to bourbon fascism. I love bourbon. I finally been converted recently, thanks to a buddy. But I mean, I was diehard Scotch for 4 years. But so we think that there's certain things that define us and are really good. But then once you spend 2 days, oh wait, this is all. It's just that it's the thing that I said in the monologue. It's you get to the pinnacle, the mountaintop, and you're like, oh, I thought the view was going to be a little better, dude.
Thought I could breathe.
Oh, God. So moving over, we'll get to the Keynesian pedophile mafia. That's probably got most people scratching their heads. We'll get there.
Yeah. Right.
Boring. Yeah, I'm sorry, Missourians. I don't know jack shit about Missouri, so God bless y'all. I'm sure it's great, but hey, it's a vacuum. You can put up whatever you want there. Maybe you can just stay in Missouri. I mean, you got the borders already, all good. Corn, Nebraska, and some other place. I never can. No, that isn't even Nebraska. What is that?
What direction are we going in here?
I'm
like we started.
I mean, I'm looking at. I have on screen just the bottom right quadrant, the southeast
Okay,
United States.
gotcha. Okay, just
But I'm getting up
okay.
into the heartland a little bit.
You had originally said we were going to go counterclockwise. And then
Yeah,
we
I know. We're kind of like in the middle.
Then we just started like zigzagging.
Yeah.
Okay. But see here's see corn. It's to me corn and boring is like cop out. Corn what?
I don't know. That's what I mean. I know I am the all powerful leader who's decreed that this is the new gerrymandering of national boundaries of the United States. But I really don't know anything about this. And this is again another point why it is stupid for some bureaucrat on the other side of the world to make political decisions about a place he's never been. I don't even understand hardly anything about the heartland. And I'm ostensibly a middle America person, but I don't know jack shit about that stuff in there. So if I were to make any policy decisions about them, it would be stupid. But that is literally the globalist initiative of political decision making. It's like, oh well, this worked here. Look, it worked in Sweden. Let's just apply it in boring Missouri. No, it's not going to work.
And I think the other thing to remember about this too is this was done like fairly quickly, and we if we wanted to, we could sit here and refine and make it beautiful, but is it really worth it? And so it's almost kind of like
no, memes are supposed to be very I get that.
If this was a true,
we put a lot of work in this meme compared to a lot of memes I've seen.
If this was a true meme, if this was a true meme, we would have like blatant misspellings,
Yeah,
that's
because
true.
there's always
pictures and just like pictures instead of words. Yeah.
But
that is Nebraska. Shouldn't that be like some kind of a sports thing?
Yeah. They're just going to have to convert. They're going to have to become SEC.
But back to what I was going to say. Back to my point is there's just certain ones where we tried to have, again, like done under a certain amount of time. Like we tried to have some good ones, and then it's some places where we're like, let's just, I don't know, we'll just put something here. And so it's not really meant to be like a dissection of.
I get that, but we're dissecting it now. So
let's so corn, it's a bad joke. I don't know jack shit about Kansas and Nebraska. Also another bad joke. This was just really quick. Incest Empire, West Virginia. It's just a way to hang a lantern on how mean people can be about West Virginia. I don't know what it is, but I've made jokes at the expense of West Virginia. It's like, really? Is there that much incest in West Virginia per capita?
It's beautiful.
It's actually a beautiful place, but so I mean, just think, John Denver told us, country road,
Mountain Mama.
Well, maybe so. Maybe there's some incest going on there. But this kind of thing, I've noticed it when I was in India too. There's certain states that get this kind of West Virginia, and it's totally, you can sit there and talk about racism and what do you call racial profiling or stereotyping. They'll have that talk when they're talking about politics in America, but then they'll turn around and talk about a state within India with this, like even worse than talking about West Virginia. You're like, wait, what did you just say? Say it again. And they'll be like, oh shit. I'm sorry. Like that just doesn't, it's not, because it's not meant to be mean spirit. It's just a joke, like so much of this stuff is jokes. So anyway, and out of ignorance, because it's like, I don't know anything about West Virginia. So much of this stuff is just, I don't know. And so when you don't know something, you either get xenophobic and want them nowhere near you, or you make jokes about them because you don't know.
You memeify it. You really do.
Yeah,
we do. Like in the original meaning of meme,
Yeah. So below Nebraska, to the west of Boring, is what state is that?
Is right below Boring?
Oh, that's Kansas. Really? Is that Kansas? Cis Heartland?
Yeah. Oh, you're asking what state it is. Yes, Kansas is Cis Heartland.
Okay, so that is the joke. So the joke below it, Oklahoma.
No. The one below it is Arkansas, I think.
No, Arkansas's on top of it.
No.
Wait, where's Arkansas? Arkansas is right below Boring.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, that's Missouri.
Mansplaining?
Yes.
Yeah.
So those, okay. This little area right here. So mansplaining punishable by death. That's one of Jared's jokes.
Yeah. So originally it was, I think we were just trying to find a place to put feminism, right? And so I felt like it should be more specific than that, because every time I within minutes of one another can get called a snowflake liberal on Twitter or be accused of mansplaining because I'm a true centrist, and so I'm just constantly everyone hates me because the far left hates me and the right hates me. So but there is a common argument or a common accusation that gets thrown at basically anyone who argues with a hardcore feminist, is that you're mansplaining, and so it'll just be about like factual stuff, like uh, a woman from the far left could say that the sky is purple, and I could say, well, no, I mean it's actually blue. You're mansplaining. You're mansplaining to me. How dare you
Well,
mansplain?
and
And so it's a defense mechanism. And so it's like the worst thing. Like I've just expected, uh, the thing that's going to follow that to be like, you're cyber raping, or something like
Well,
that. Like I think that's going to be.
that's
Honestly,
the
I
next
think
one.
that's going to be.
Yeah.
It's going to be the next thing.
Cyber, yeah, we should replace mansplaining by cyber raping is punishable by death, and that basically just means liking a post at this point. A
Right.
like is mansplaining.
Yeah, right.
Retweeting.
Laughing at a woman's joke is mansplaining.
And so I think like it should just be carried to the logical extreme to where mansplaining is to some people just the worst thing, so it should be punishable by death.
Okay, and so here's another thing that I kind of want to bring out is that, is this a hill that you're willing to die on and kill for?
Right.
And so that's the double-edged sword of this whole thought experiment, is to say, if you went there in these places, you would have to execute the full measure of the law yourself, as if you were on a jury. But no one else is going to wield it. It's going to be firing squad, and everybody who believes it has to go to the firing squad. If they can't pull the trigger, then the person gets to leave.
It's Game of Thrones.
And they have to leave.
It's Game of Thrones. The man who passes the sentence swings the sword, or
Yes.
woman in this case.
Yes, man or woman has to swing the sword. And if they're not able to, then that person gets exiled, and so does the person that was going to be killed. Because if they're not willing to actually mete out the sentence, then the person is. So it puts it like to the point of practical application, where what I found through boxing is that so much you think that getting hit is the worst part, but when you actually land a punch, it's surprising how visceral it is and how much you realize, geez, I don't actually want to hurt people. I thought I did. And then when you hurt them, you're like, oh, yeah, this is more than I thought it was, So I think forcing actually more violence in our culture would be good if it were mitigated by some kind of sport, by some sort of challenge. If people actually had, like, instead of like these mediated forms of violence with the sports we have now, it were more like UFC and bare knuckle boxing and stuff, where people actually felt, bone and flesh and realize, oh man, I hated that guy, and now I kind of realize we got more in common than I thought. And so that's kind of one of the thought experiments in this exercise, is say, would you really be willing to kill? Is this a hill not only you're willing to die on, but to kill for? And of course, every state would be, maybe they don't punish it by death. Maybe they only punish it by exile or by a tax or something like that. I mean, there's just, the sky's the limit in terms of improvisation off of these norms. But mansplaining punishable by death, what is that place? Arkansas. Then right to the west of that, we have Oklahoma, land of infinite pronouns.
Wait, can I just say that I think I like the fact that that's like Arkansas. That's like home state of like Bill Clinton.
Right.
Yeah. Some of these are intentionally backwards.
Right. So land of infinite pronouns. I have a friend who, and this is really not meant to be, again, this is just a joke at some of the ways that we've gone about these debates. I have a friend who's from the heartland and really loves it, but she is much more on the blue side and not following cis norms. And we have I have had a lot of fun with her, and I hope she's had as much fun with me. We're friends as far as I think either of us is concerned. But this little place here, land of infinite pronouns, would be for anybody who wants to take this to the logical conclusion. I think another thing that this is meant to bring out, like how many people would be willing to move there for that purpose? Mm-hmm. And the same thing with cis heartland. How many people are willing to live and die on like the traditional gender sex norms? Like, how many people are willing to die on that hill? Are they going to actually pack up and move across country for that one thing?
But I think that brings up a really important dichotomy between conservatism and liberalism. Liberals don't want to go somewhere and live somewhere that everybody believes like they do, like conservatives do. They want everybody to be that way.
See, but that is kind of a perversion of that's a certain kind of liberal, and I'm not convinced that every liberal feels that way. I mean, that's kind of a reduction. In the same way, and where do they get that from? I mean, you look at, that's really kind of a territorializing, tyrannical empire way of viewing things. And if we look at the top left over here, Christian colonialism that was really the mindset of a lot of Christian missions in tandem with the British Empire and different European empires, that it was a colonizing mechanism. So that's not something endemic just to the left. The right has that version too. Just even the notion of saying, I believe that there's only one path to the Father, and that's through my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and anyone who doesn't believe him is going to hell. I mean, that's a pretty totalizing metric.
Yeah, but that's not a conservative, that's not a particularly conservative, that's a religious type thing. Whereas, and I think that's the difference, is like this mansplaining thing is more of a religious, I don't know, what would you call it? Cultural thing. I mean, you wouldn't find people that believe mansplaining is a bad thing to say, like, I want to go where everybody doesn't mansplain. They'd say, like, I want everybody not, to mansplain.
Yeah, but that's another part of this whole equation, is to show people that not everyone is going to think like them. And if you have a problem with that, you're probably not going to fit in bourbon fascism. If like that is, you're like, oh, well, I believe that, like, are you allowed to be in bourbon fascism place? Well, if they allow you to be, but if you're constantly going around every interaction, the existence of bourbon is mansplaining, like, I think you're going to get exiled.
Yeah, and I mean, just to that point, I mean, I've been told by numerous people, not just online, but even a couple of acquaintances that I know, because they've seen stuff I've said online, about Trump or whatever, is that I should leave America. So I mean, this is definitely not. It's right. Very much split nowadays. Like it's like, if you don't believe this, we want you to get out. I think conservatism in the past hasn't been, but I mean, what it is now, I mean, it's just dogma on both sides.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're talking about Trumpkins and Trump followers. I mean, we're in a different political time there. Trump followers are not conservatives. I mean, most of them are conservative, but that's not conservatism. I'm talking about conservatism as an ideal.
Well, but the way that it's played out, you're always going to have your trolls. You're always going to have your true believers that claim to think that they want to execute people who don't agree. Like that, that exists in every milieu, and the problem is, it's the squeakiest wheels that get the most attention. And so most of what the quote unquote SJW is represented are the ones that are being the loudest about it. But a lot of them are not like going out on a limb to just make it like a hill to die on. They believe it, but they're really not trying to convert me as a straight person or my family. They're not. And there are people, I'm saying there are, but just, you can't, it's the same thing. You can't paint with a broad brush in their direction and not expect to be painted with a broad brush in your direction. That's the whole exercise here.
Well, can you think of a liberal tenant that they would be okay?
But what does that mean, liberal? It doesn't even have any meaning. That's my whole point with this blue and red debacle that we found ourselves in. When you say conservative, you have one thing in your mind, but it's not what Trump-tard has in his mind. It's not what I have in my mind. It's not what a leftist has in his mind. And what does even left and right even mean anymore? Liberal does not mean liberal. It quite literally means the opposite of liberal at this point. Right. It means progressivism. Liberal here versus liberal in Europe has two totally different meanings. And we don't, and everyone keeps saying, oh, well, we do have a shared nomenclature. No, we don't have a shared nomenclature at all. Like, we have lost the thread here entirely, and this whole experiment is just to hang a lantern on just how many threads there are that we're overlooking when we're trying to make global policy on a dialectical level. So even using the term conservative here or leftist, I just think, no. I mean, there are a lot of leftists who wouldn't want to live in land of infinite pronouns, but there are people who would be like, this this is important enough to me. Like, I want to pursue my unique, fluid expression of human gender and sexuality in a safe space, and they would be interested enough in that. Would there be enough to fill up all of Oklahoma? I think they would be surprised to see how few there are actually there. And that's what I mean with a lot of this stuff. And we'll get to some, swipes at conservatives in a minute, quote unquote conservatives in a minute, where they wouldn't be able to fill up the state. But that's all we've heard. We hear about gender pronouns, and we hear about Christian wedding cakes. And it's like, what is the percentage of American life? How is that dominated as much of the news cycle as we've allowed it to? It's like, how much of life is that actually representing real citizens of the United States of America? It's like, create your own country if you think it's that big of a deal, and see how big it is. Maybe it's only a city-state. And so that's part of the joke of this whole thing. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think my point was just that this exercise, actually, I could see, like, my version, or what I see as a conservative, easily seeing this as like, okay, yeah, I'll pick a state. I'll go there. Whereas, like, this would probably be way more repugnant to what I consider a liberal.
I don't know. See, I've had some really interesting interactions on Twitter where I've met people that just defy expectations. They have a certain political perspective, but then they have a very different cultural perspective, very different taste, aesthetic perspective. And we jive on those things. And then if we get into politics talk, we're like, oh, yeah, okay, you're kind of crazy. And they think I'm crazy, and I think they're crazy. But then we get back to talking about whatever the topic was. We're like, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. And I think, in general, we would probably live in the same state. Because we do now. So, all right. We got to rush through. Y'all have got a podcast like 10 minutes. We're going to speed round through the rest. All right. So we've got Louisiana and Texas. Don't mess with Texas, baby. Don't mess with Louisiana. We're leaving them just as is. Don't mess with Texas. Free range alligator farms. Was that yours, Jared?
Yeah, that was mine. Yeah.
So we kept them sovereign. Like, Louisiana is just too great of an interesting milieu. I love it. God bless New Orleans. And just a wild, the Atchafalaya Basin. It's quite an interesting mix. And that's another thing. The whole purpose of this exercise is to get people to realize there's some great things about these places. Like, do we really want Tennessee to turn into meth as legal? Like, it's kind of, no. Like, some of these places are just, do I really want Florida to be broken up? All those weird Florida man stories would dissipate, Like, so it's kind of great as it is. And so part of this is just a thought experiment in that direction. All right, top right, let's go to that. Okay, so we'll start up. We're going to start with a Bernie joke. So Bernie is going to get, well, I'll start with the Christian wedding cake artist. So there they are. That was Jared's joke. Maine. We're going to give all of Maine to the 5 Christian wedding cake artists who've been implicated in lawsuits. They get to have the whole state. And anybody who thinks that is a political hill worth dying on, they can go up there and make wedding cakes for the rest of eternity.
Yeah, it's just meant to be disproportionate. Give them a big state.
Give them a big state. They need room to explore the space. Then we got vegan barbecue below that. And that's just, I don't even remember what the point of that joke was. But you got a red state, blue state by it. Vegan barbecue. I don't remember. It was just a contradiction. It was a joke. White nationalist, democratic, socialist ice cream factory. So my favorite thing was Ben & Jerry's making 2 unique flavors for the socialist Bernie Sanders out of Vermont. They're a Vermont located company, I believe, and Vermont is the most white state in the union, just about 90, I think it's like 99% white. And they're the ones that are leveraging these identity politics things all the time, talking about Marxism. In the meantime, they utilize the leverage of capitalism to make factory-produced ice cream to sell to raise money. It's just too perfect to me. Just all the incongruities there. White nationalist, democratic, socialist ice cream factory. Vermont, go up there and pretend to be socialist together while you make tons of money and buy Audis. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I think it's one of the better ones. I like the randomness of it.
Stands alone. Then next to that, we got gay Republicans. There's probably more of them than you actually think, especially in a post-Trump milieu. But I know my favorite gay Republican. He would not be staying there. I'll show you where he will be staying.
Peter Thiel.
Oh, no, Peter Thiel probably he wouldn't be there either. Well, I don't know. He's
Oh no, I know who you're talking
yeah.
about.
Don't tread on me. That's Massachusetts. Just that, that's basically where the whole foment of revolution came from. We got State of the Unions is New York and parts of Maryland. So it's just a dumb joke.
New Hong Kong. What? Like, is that just completely race based?
No. So the idea is Hong Kong is really, like this safe area where capitalism was able to be employed under the guidance of a British model, and then it was left to flourish and do its own thing under its own steam. I think it's, it's a success story in a lot of ways, and it's kind of an urban warning story, I guess, in some ways, but I guess all urban areas are kind of a warning. But so no, it's kind of like New York has expanded beyond York to be something, of its own, and so it's just kind of a joke that it's become its own sovereign nation. Though it's big enough. Hong Kong it's kind of we've been seeing some of the we wrote this before a lot of the protests that actually happened. Yeah, we wrote this before that. But like at the time, Hong Kong was kind of a bastion of free,
I mean, when
quote
it's
unquote
juxtaposed to China, but like juxtaposed to what do you have now? State of the Union.
Right.
I think it actually works better now, even though we did it, pre all the stuff that's kind of been in
probably
the news.
so.
Because like, especially after the whole flap with the NBA, then this became like like Ben Shapiro was selling like free Hong Kong T-shirts, because the NBA, got on the side of, basically getting in trouble for kind of not being willing to say anything against China. So I think it actually works now better than even before.
Okay, we're actually just going to run out of time here. So, Amish technology. We'll just do the rest of this little.
What are
this
your
one
favorites?
panel.
Go to your favorites.
Okay, favorites. Keynesian pedophile mafia. So that's Chicago, Illinois, and that other place. What is that? Iowa over there? I never can remember.
No.
What is to the east? Ohio. I always get Ohio mixed up with Iowa. See, that's how much I know. But yeah, so. Chicago School of Economics. Yeah. Well, Keynes, of course, he's a British dude, and so that's the old British Raj flag. So I used the flag that the British Commonwealth used in India. Keynes did some of his economic study in India. People, you have a lot of people on the right that want to blame the Jews for everything. It's like, oh, it's the the Rothschilds are behind everything. It's like, no, for the last 100 years, it's been John Maynard Keynes' vision of centralized control, quote unquote, capitalism, which has been anything but. It's this socialized, centralized, like Hydra, and it comes from a white dude. Like that, Keynes has been more influential on the global stage than anyone. We've had this debate between Marx and Adam Smith. It's like it's not even in the universe of where we are. In the meanwhile, there's this, or you could say like, people saying that it's Jews or Marx or capitalists that are the problem. Well, no, it's actually this dude in the middle, this British dude who has allegations of being a pedophile. And who was into eugenics, by the way, who wanted to exterminate lesser races, quote unquote. So you've got this white supremacist, totalitarian Londoner who has this bullshit political economic ideology that has ruled the world for the last 100 years. And we're sitting here pretending to have debates, LARPing as socialists and capitalists. LARPing. We're just live action role playing because the economic milieu in which we live is this right here, Keynesian pedophile mafia. And the Chicago School of American Economics carried it on, diluted it to some degree, but it's just this is the hub of everything that exists on planet Earth in 2019. And now it's gotten even worse. Modern monetary theory makes Keynesian capitalism look like pure capitalism. Modern monetary theory is the biggest joke of an economic system ever devised by a human being. It's the biggest Ponzi scheme in the history of the world. And that is literally, we are running on fumes right now. And it's all because of this. And so, I just wanted to put that in there as a shout out to the...
That's assuming Ponzi schemes are bad, but whatever.
All right, there's that one. Any other ones you want to call attention to there?
Nah, I don't want to rush through it. I don't know. We'll just do it some other time, or I don't know.
How about we just let people bask in it?
Yeah, just let people bask in it, let it percolate.
Maybe.
I mean, we went from like 20 viewers to like 2.
Oh, it's typical. Nobody can listen to me talk for an hour and a half. Well, we'll mention our favorite one, Pervs, Puritans, and Potheads. That's the promised land right there, ladies. You see, it starts red, goes blue, then yellow, then green. It's the gradient of coming together.
It's a rainbow state.
It is, yeah. It is a rainbow state of its own. And then you got perfume nationalists, and shout out to my perfume nationalists. Live, laugh, and love. That is the flag there for the perfume nationalists. Going to take over all of Las Vegas, and there'll be perfect. No border there, so you can go right on into. If you want to enjoy, like Jack of that podcast, he's a big fan of the Red Scare podcast, and they're members of the Dirtbag Left, Scumbag Left podcast confederation. So they're going to be over there in California, so he'll be able to see them, come back in when he gets tired of the speech codes, and he can have fun with the pervs. And and I'll be going back and forth. I'm really not a pothead, but I do like the geography, and if the Dirtbag Left will let me come in, I would like to surf in California. So I'll be sure to get my green card, or blue card, as it were.
So can you tell the two I want to know a little bit more about? Guns, no God. So I was born in New Mexico, so I was curious about that.
Okay, so Guns, no God, that's like a Hunter S. Thompson thing. Like he was a diehard gun guy, just this crazy drug addicted gunman. And I just think, there is a history in our culture of people that just don't have room for God. And I do think in general, people have pretended to be Christians or towed the party line and don't care at all. It's just not. It just doesn't make up part of their life. It is part of the American milieu, and I've had some of my best relationships with God people. I mean, gun people. No God people. No God gun people.
It's interesting. And then the other one is rugged individualists. What do you have to do to be there?
So.
Be rugged?
Rugged individuals. So a lot of people are leaving en masse from the Silicon Valley area, and they've migrated to Idaho. And they've migrated to Idaho, Boise specifically, just because they're tired of this just stifling political discussion. And really, they're probably somewhere in the middle. They have some very social, like Joe Rogan would be the quintessential rugged individualist to put in here. He definitely leans more like he's happy to pay taxes. He's happy for socialized certain parts of the thing. Like he thinks a libertarian is a total idiot for thinking that roads could be built by someone 2,000 years after the Roman Empire without the centralized state control. He thinks it's possible to make a Tesla, but it's not possible to build a road. So that's fine. Like so he believes in that kind of purple, like in the middle. He wants something socialized, but not everything socialized. He wants to be able to have free speech, and more power to him. So I think rugged individualists, a lot of people like me would probably end up there. Like there's not many homes for libertarians in these areas. A lot of us libertarians fight over specific things. So I think you'd be surprised by the kind of milieu that would grow there. Like some people that are a little socially democrat, but then ironically like want to have a gun. They're socially democrat, but they ironically want to are in the middle on some other issue. Yeah. So,
it's very It's actually very accurate.
I would,
A lot of that going on there right
I
now.
would love to, hang out in that kind of area. North American pagans, like I'd be down for hanging out with North American pagans, and that's not like respective of actual race. It's actually respective of just people's background in terms of their religious daily practice. So, and then there's a lot of stuff up at the top. Again, those are just kind of picking jokes at all of us, the Christian colonialists. Like that's what I would have been when I was growing up, and then I realized, when I started traveling overseas, the world is different than I thought it was. It does not fit like a quote unquote '90s evangelical Christian conservative idea of what the world is actually like, and I hit the wall pretty quick with that sort of mentality. All right.
And Hotep, what's that?
Hotep, they are like the black nationalists. They're kind of just this interesting milieu that I can't even really characterize it. I really find them fascinating. They're unique people. I put them red, but they're not necessarily red. They might be anti-Trump, but they have a little more conservative on certain things. Dreads is the first thing that come to mind, but that's a stereotype. There a lot of that sort of Rastafarian, Haile Selassie sort of stuff, but not necessarily with weed or Jamaica. Like it's a really interesting milieu. Like I really admire this. It's a really unique sort of culture. You can find them on Twitter. If you look up Hotep, you can find some of them. It's cool. They're cool dudes. And then, you got next to them, they got Jesus was black. Like people who believe Jesus is black, they can be there. Social justice Jesus is a little more purple. Those are the people that are probably evangelical or, I don't know, mainline, that are kind of like, but social Jesus applied to social problems is their real thing. And then they get to have the Hillsong Heaven next to them. So God bless them. Black Hebrew Israelites, that's a real thing. So they can have their, they can have their thing too. So, and then, anti-abortion. You want to be anti-abortion, move there. And I mean, like, like you're going to exile people who are engaged in abortion, or anti-war. You move there. I mean, like, anti-war is a big stance of mine politically. But would I really be willing to move to South Dakota? I don't know. I might. I mean, it just depends. The great thing about our world now, the final thing to say, the great thing about our world now is if you did have to move, like you're like, this is my fundamental principle, I cannot compromise on this issue. Like I would not be able to live myself if I'm paying taxes for something subsidizing one of these things that's I'm against ideologically. Then you move there. But the great thing is we have the internet. So I mean, you can still have interactions. And that's kind of the importance, is like you said about Ryan McMakin's talk, is to realize the value of people from other milieus. Like, I think there are good things that Democrats do. Like, and I would be happy, like, I think eventually to go back to Silicon Valley and to LA. Although LA is not on this map because we sacrificed it to Neptune, as per Maynard's instructions from Tool in Enema. So it's an atonement for climate change. It has to be done. So leftists, you get your way. Here we go. We're doing it right here. Arizona Bay, aka ritual sacrifice to climate change god for the water shortage that LA has inflicted upon the Southwest. So there you go. You get to have your cake and eat it too. You get to do your vestigial sacrifice to a demigod that you believe rules the world, climate change. There you go. So we get to have Arizona Bay. No more LA, no more Hollywood. Everyone can be happy.
Interesting. Live high or die.
Live high or die. Yes. Yeah, that's right, baby. We're going to Alaska. Surfing pagans? Hell yeah. If the surfing pagans would let me in, if Hawaiians would deign me with a beloved haole and let me come in at the border to surf, then I would accept that.
I'm going to share the heck out of this. I'm really curious to see what the reaction is going to be from that.
And notice the Federal Reserve, the FBI, and the CIA are relegated to nowhere. F those guys. They could go, exercise their control from the middle of nowhere.
My favorite one is in the upper left, the Antifa milkshake machine is down. And so this originally we were trying to figure out somewhere to put Antifa, and again, like, you can't just do it as simple as for the same reason that feminism isn't feminism, it's mansplaining punishable by death. Like, you can't just put Antifa. And so So originally I was thinking like the Antifa milkshake stand, and so Ford's like, oh no, it's the Antifa milkshake machine is down, which brings in pop culture too. So yeah, that's maybe my favorite one.
And then there's, of course, the most problematic one, No Poo in the Lou, Indigenous Tribalism Sanctuary. So let me explain that for just 1 second. So what people forget is that white people were pagans too, and we were tribal too. All of Game of Thrones is talking about British or English tribalism, basically, fighting between all these different families and stuff. And shit was in the streets in England forever too. Shit was in the streets of Paris forever too, until a technological change happened. It wasn't really an ideological change. It wasn't a religious change. Now, did some of those things come into play? I think so. I think they came into play, but it was really the Industrial Revolution that made it possible for manure not to be covering the streets. And so it was this technological change over time. When you are in a tribalistic scenario, when there is not an external power to fight, you fight with one another. And so that is the problem when the left wants to have these sanctuary cities. Well, the problem with that is not everyone in the sanctuary city likes each other anyway. Like, oh, they stick it to the white man when the white man is in the room, but as soon as they're out of the room, then they go to fighting again. And this is true of white men, all right? This is true of our past. There's something in the American experiment that is obviously got a lot of work to be done. There's something in the American experiment that is looking past just any single one thing, whether it be race, whether it be tribe, whether it be nation, whether it be language, whether it be religion. Again, this whole point of this thing. It's so easy to become tribalistic in terms of, I am not going to work with you at all. And then you end up with just shit in the streets. Like that's what finally happens, because no one is willing to actually do the hard work of the infrastructure. And so this whole map is basically a call to people to say, do you really care enough, not only to live or die or to kill in the name of the thing that you think is your fundamental principle, but are you willing to clean the shit? Like, that's the real thing. Are you willing to do the hard infrastructural stuff? And if you've ever tried to start a company, man, you get real quick, you're like, oh, well, where is so-and-so to do this thing? And you're like, oh, that would be me. Oh, that would be me. And then you start realizing, is this worth it? I really, really like having plumbing. Yeah, that's pretty nice. And so then things start to come into focus. But if we make at a certain point, cooperation has to enter the equation. So we're not looking, this radical political decentralization, we're not looking for tribalism. A return to tribalism is not going to help white people or black people or brown people or Christians or Muslims or atheists or Hindus. It's not going to help anyone. There is something better than tribalism, social cooperation that is sovereignly self-determined. Now, how we get there, it's a long way. All right, I make no claims to any sort of utopian ideal. This is a joke, but it's just to get the conversation going. I don't think we will see that kind of thing too soon, like that level of social cooperation. But I think it's going to happen quicker than we expected. It's going to be kind of like a exponential growth. Like there's just one log holding up progress in that direction of sovereign, self-determined cooperation. So that's different than tribalism. And if you re-engage in tribalism of the past, you'll end up with Vikings or shit in the streets and the rivers. And that's it. So that's the idea there. Any other thoughts? All right. Well,
the one thought I have.
Okay, here we go.
This doesn't. So this sort of flies in the face of the Nisus guy that you.
No, it does not. How? How does it fly in the face of the Nisus guy?
Okay, so if you do balkanize, let's say we balkanize, then it continually breaks down, and creates sort of little Balkans that nobody really wants to be in because it's so.
No.
It's no.
So Rothbard wrote a great essay on this. I've read it a few times now, and man, crap. I can't remember the name of it.
And he referenced the Rothbard discussion.
Yes, that was Rothbard Unlimited Secession. Is that it?
He was talking about how Rothbard said like, so if if you don't believe, what do you do with the 40% that don't vote with the 60%? Well, they create their own state.
Yeah, so he does deal with some of the. Again, this is hypothetical because no one really lets us get to that point in a post
But I mean,
World
looking
War
at this
One
map,
world. We're just no
looking
one
at this
even
map,
lets.
do you want to?
Huh?
Do we want to? Looking at this map,
I think yes. I think it's probably not going to be this many. I think
it'd be way more.
no, because that's what I'm saying. They have to do their own infrastructure. How many of these people will have the capabilities? They'll have to hire other people to do their infrastructure, and that's when they'll realize, oh wait, I'm depending on that quote unquote racist Nazi guy to have to come in here and do it. Oh, I'm depending on that Mexican that I think shouldn't be in my country. Like you start meeting it face to face when you actually have to do the dirty work of dealing with the infrastructure. And so what we have here is just like the execution thing. When someone else is wielding the sword for you, you don't have to deal with it. When someone else is doing the plumbing for you and the line, making sure the electricity runs, then you can just take it for granted that it's just like, oh, this is the world we live in. Let's overthrow capital. It's like capital has made it possible for you to even have that argument. So as soon as you actually have to do the infrastructure, then you start realizing, oh, wow, this is way more complicated than I thought.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's what I mean. That part flies in the face.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like getting people to do this exercise will end up in more manageable nation states. But I do think that a country as big as the United States in terms of geography is wasted potential because you cannot get 400 million people to agree on anything. Anything. You can get 12 people to agree on anything. You want 400 million people to agree on something? No, it's too big. And so that's the whole problem with globalism is it's saying that we can do the Roman Empire again. We don't need to anymore. We have technology to mitigate some of the difficulties of having something this big. So no, Mises will be totally pro this. I don't think we need 30, nation states or 50 or 40, whatever we've made. I think probably it would be more like, I don't know, 10 or 12.
I
5
guess
to
what
7.
I'm saying is like while listening to that discussion, that talk, I really agreed with it. And then going through this exercise, I'm like, let's just keep the way things the way they are.
Well,
now.
yeah, but not everyone is as lazy as you or me.
I guess, but to me, it's not laziness. It's just like, what? I like. I don't know. To me, there's a conundrum there where it's like.
But the point is, between the way we have our milieu now and this, joke idea, is there are other options. And what drives me crazy whenever we have these kind of discussions is you always take the dialectic. You don't even take a dialectic. You say, oh, well, no, this is just the way it is. Why? Like Luxembourg exists. That's like a country of the size of Atlanta. It's a country. Like why do you assume that this giant nation of 400 million people is ultimate and cannot be questioned? That's your conservatism coming out. And I would say that it's holding you back from truly understanding the sovereign individuality and self-determination that Mises is and Rothbard are advocating.
Could be. And I'm okay with that.
All right, Jared, what do you thought? Any thoughts there?
No, let's put this out of its misery.
All right. All right, thanks, guys. Well, I appreciate it. To anybody left in the chat, sorry we weren't very interactive with chat. I really thought we were going to have this firestorm in the chat. It was really just people like, hey, what's
people
up?
Just laughed.
Yeah, okay, these guys are idiots. All right, well, Godspeed to everyone. Thanks, Allison, for the kind words there. Yeah, until next time, keep it creative, cross-cultural, and constructive, and we'll see you on the other side. Also, if you're into football, if you're part of the SEC nation state, you can go over and visit. Oh, y'all talk about the NFL, though, right? Is that right?
Yeah. We talk about fantasy. So
okay. So if you're into football, go check them out.
Roto Hackers.
And y'all broadcast on YouTube?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. So
Google Road to Hackers.
All right, Godspeed. I may be coming back and playing some League of Legends, but the surf is up, so I will. If you see me on, come do some League with me. If not, I'll be surfing. Godspeed.